Hello, everyone. And guess what? She's only gone and done it and got the technology right today. Welcome to MindAbility Matters. And I am joined today by the fabulous Jennie Beasley. Jennie and I first started working together. Jennie, I think it was last year, wasn't it? Beginning of last year?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably about a year and a half.
Is it? Gosh,
Maybe a bit
see,
less.
time flies when you're
Yeah,
having fun.
yeah,
But I was
continues.
so just when I first started working with Jennie, she's been an HR leader in food manufacturing. She's seen a lot, she's been through a lot, she's experienced a lot. And I was really taken by her passion to help other HR leaders to really create some of those much needed boundaries. Anyway, Jennie, I could wax lyrical about you for hours. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and thanks for that intro. So I'm Jennie, and yeah, I think the best way I can describe it, last sort of 20 or so years in food manufacturing, in HR roles, some in big organisations, some sort of standalone roles. And yeah, I think, like you said, my passion is to provide the support that I needed when I was doing these roles, because there have been a number of times when I've struggled through my career, and as I've kind of mapped out that progress of kind of thinking, yeah, this is when I needed it, this is when I needed it, it actually matches up with all the things that I offer now. So I didn't realise that till I sort of started preparing for this. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's all about HR people having some support, because I feel like they provide that support for everybody else.
And when you look at the work that you've done, I mean, I know you and I often talk about some of the outcomes and what you're proud of, but I'd love you to share
Yeah,
some of those moments in terms of some of the outcomes you've got for some of your client base since you started this business.
yeah. So I think the main outcomes that I see is, I think people question themselves. So often I hear all of the people I work with say, is it me? I don't know if I'm thinking this, but I just don't know if it's the right thing. And it's being able to give that reassurance and be that sounding board, because 9 times out of 10 people have got generally the right ideas, sometimes maybe need some support to get there, or some different ways of looking at things, but often have good ideas, but question themselves so much that they often don't do a lot of it, or don't feel good about it even if they do. So I think in terms of outcomes, I've had people say things like, I felt like it was a reboot. I feel my confidence growing. I didn't think I was an HR business partner. Now I do. I feel like I am that. People saying things like they have an idea of what to do, where to start, what's important, some things that they just were blindingly obvious to them, but they couldn't see it and they weren't able to come to it by themselves. So I think that's the thing that people get out of the coaching and mentoring particularly.
Why was it so important to you to launch this particular business?
Because I think I probably would have stayed in HR if I had had that support myself. I think the things that I see other people struggling with were the things I was struggling with, and I felt a bit ashamed, a bit useless, a bit like everybody else had got it all together. And then when you talk to the most amazing, confident, competent HR people, you find most people have an element of that. But I didn't know that then. I just thought it was me. And I think people are more open now to talking about how they feel. But I think if I think back earlier in my career, everybody kind of like just sort of said everything was fine and kept going. And I thought, why is everyone else fine and I'm not? So I think that's why it's important to me, because I don't want other people to feel like that. I want them to get there quicker than I did. And I think one of the things I thought you had to be an extrovert to be good at HR, and I'm doing it badly. And it's took me a long time. It probably wasn't until I was job sharing that I realised that there was different ways of doing it. And I think that's another thing that comes out of having the support of a coach or a mentor, is to find your own style. You can't do it the way other people do it, or the way people tell you to do it. You have to do it the way that it works for you. You've got to use your own sort of style and be authentic to yourself. And I think I was always trying to do it the way other people do it, and it never felt right.
At what point for you did it feel right? And what What was that pivotal moment where you were able to make that change for yourself?
Yeah, probably quite late, if I'm honest. So I left sort of full-time in-house HR Feb 2022, and then ended up just through a contact going back into HR consultancy. And it probably wasn't truly until then when I really got comfortable with my own style, I think. So probably never, if I hadn't done that. I think I would have stepped away from it, never realising it. A lot of stuff is easier to see with hindsight. You can't always see it when you're in role.
If someone's watching this either live or they're watching it afterwards,
Yeah.
and they're telling themselves everything's fine, because I think we're all
Yeah,
very good at that, aren't we? I've had some
absolutely.
incredible
Yeah,
conversations today, which with some really inspiring women who have battled the most horrific things and have told themselves that it's okay, and no one has known about
yeah,
what was happening to them. What were those
yeah,
telltale signs where, I'm not going to say you woke up, because it's not about that, is it? Where you kind of had that aha moment of, yeah, okay, and you started on that journey of your own self-discovery.
yeah. So when did it sort of start for me?
Yeah, what were those signs, first signs for you?
First signs that I needed to do something different.
Hmm.
Um, I think probably coming across coaching helped me to realise that there was different ways of doing things. I think there was little things all the way along, but when I was made redundant from a part-time role, and I seriously thought I'll never get another job part-time ever again. And I got myself convinced that I couldn't do anything without a job share partner. And I went and I actually did get a better job part-time close to home. And I did do it all on my own. And I think that was a realization, but I kind of knew that was going to be my last one. I remember when they offered me the job, I cried, not because I was happy, but because I knew it wasn't what I wanted, but I wasn't ready to go on my own yet.
Yeah. And Jenny, yours is a real heartfelt story, and you and I have spent many hours talking about your journey, what you went through.
Mm.
What's your hope for HR leaders and where you'd like them to be?
I would love to think that nobody else has a time where they feel completely alone, where they've got nobody to go to because they are HR, they've got an issue perhaps with the person they're working for, and they are completely isolated. I would hope that nobody's in that position. I think there's much more on offer now, but I hope every single person feels there's somewhere to go if they do find themselves in a position where they're in a role that isn't right for them or they're struggling, that everybody can get some help.
So much of it is, again, and we've had these conversations, we've seen it and heard the stories about pride. How dangerous is
Yeah,
pride?
I think it's the thing. Pride and shame, I think, are the two things that hold you. You're like, I remember thinking, I'd be like awake all night and I'd be thinking, I can't have a day off. I'm HR. You can't be absent when you're HR. I can get through this. I'm not going to let them get me down. I'm not going to, and I think it is that pride that you don't want to let anybody else down. You think you can cope and you just keep going. And I think it can be really dangerous because you will happily help everybody else, but you don't see that you need any help. So you keep going. So I think you can make yourself a lot worse. Like you can lose a lot of confidence and sort of impact yourself really negatively before you'll admit that you need to do something different.
Yeah, and it's so often the case, isn't it, with things like that? And I know that last year you started to do some events and get people together. What was the inspiration before that, and again, what came as a result of that?
So the inspiration really was that I think post-COVID, everything had kind of felt like everything had died off in terms of meeting people in person. And to really, I think one of the things I didn't do well when I was working part-time was keep any sort of network up. Like I had the people that I was working with in-house, but I didn't get out of my own head or my own job and go and do something. I didn't go and see what other people were doing. I didn't spend time with other HR people from other businesses. And I think I got myself convinced that the harder I worked, the better it would be and the better the outcomes would be. But I think actually you can be a really busy fool, and I think I was at times. But going out, meeting other people, realizing that other people do feel the same actually. And I think sometimes if you're in a big organization, there can be a bit of competition, might not be the right word, but you definitely don't want to admit you're struggling because it looks like everybody else is doing great. So you don't want to say, I'm actually finding this a bit tough. So I think the networking for me was about getting people together in person, locally, sharing experiences and a bit of support. So you've got other people to reach out to.
Yeah. And because I know those went really well for you. Are you planning on doing any more of those this year?
Yeah, so I am. I haven't got any dates organised yet, but yeah, I am planning to do some more because I think they have worked well, and there's some really useful insights that come out of it in terms of spending time with other HR people. I don't think anybody gets HR people like HR people.
No,
It's
it's so
nice to
true,
be in a
isn't it?
room
It's
just with
so
people
true.
that get it.
Yeah. And I haven't worked in food manufacturing, and I know you've got extensive experience in that sector.
Yeah.
How do you think that differs from other sectors and other HRs who you've spoken to? Because there are a lot of HRs who specialize in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, I think it's because there's such a big volume of people. I suppose there's a lot of roles. So I moved from an MOD agency into the food industry, and it was like night and day. It was just so different. Like 6 months sick pay in the civil service, and different T's and C's. I was working with like PhD type people, and then I moved to food industry, and I was like, oh, I didn't know how much statutory sick pay was. I come home and say, oh my God, police have been on site today, or the immigration service have been. And it felt like such a different world. You've got so many people all in the same place. You've got people working around the clock. You've got loads of different nationalities all kind of trying to find their place together. You've got all the different functions as well. I just think the pace, in other organisations and sectors that I've been into, the other one for me was the railway. Things take a lot longer. They need signing off. There's processes to go through. In food, it goes really quickly. And all of a sudden you can have like a big restructure or a big initiative or a big customer demand, and it's now. And you've got to move really quickly. And I was used to taking time and pace, and you haven't got time for that. I think you either love it or hate it. I think it was a massive shock to my system, but it's got so much good stuff. There's so many good people in there, and it provides an awful lot of work for a lot of people, particularly sort of in the area I'm in Lincolnshire. It's a massive employers around here.
Yeah, I remember years ago we did a big project with a manufacturing organisation, working to their shifts,
Yeah,
doing stuff at the most bizarre hours out of their canteens.
indeed. Yeah,
Having multiple
yeah,
translators there because English wasn't the first language, going through an
yeah,
outplacement
yeah,
exercise,
absolutely.
that's tough. It's so I
Yeah,
hear you on
yeah,
that. I haven't had that much, but it's always
yeah.
fascinated me.
Yeah, I think you don't think about those things when you're in different businesses, and everybody doesn't have access to sort of laptops, and they have their own phones now, but in years gone by, people were on the shop floor. You had to literally go to them. It's not like you can just send an email out and consider communication done. It's quite different, like you say, different hours. People are working every day, probably might have Christmas Day off, but apart from that, that site is constantly running. And I think that's the thing in HR. It's like, we need to keep checking the phone. It's people are working Saturdays, people have got people in, things can happen. So you've always got that sort of eye on your phone. I think it's hard for people to switch off within the food industry.
I was about to say, how did that impact you personally in your family whilst you were an HR leader in food manufacturing?
Yeah, I think it's just that feeling of being on edge. I mean, the shift, going in and seeing different shifts and stuff, that was okay because it was more planned. But, we did have, like a big IT outage and that sort of thing on a Sunday. And you kind of, I would say, makes you on edge is the best way of describing it. You always just got your eye on the phone. And you're sort of like, no, I'm going to leave it because it's the weekend. I don't need to do that. And then, God, what if something happens and I haven't seen it? And then you are the bad guy if you're the one that hasn't seen the phone and hasn't responded when everybody else has. It's almost like a bit of a only and I called the factory. And so yeah, I think it just lack of peace of mind for me. I found that hard.
Yeah, I can completely get that. And how were you able to kind of put those boundaries in place yourself? Because that's a lot on your shoulders as a
Yeah,
human being with a
yeah,
young family, which I
yeah,
know you did at the time.
yeah,
How did you
yeah.
push back on that?
Not very well. But I think over time, just setting a time to check it and just having and I think with the team as well, like call me if this and this happens, and I suppose starting to almost get a bit of an escalation procedure so people know when to phone me, don't just send an email if urgent. But I did struggle with it. I'm not sure I completely cracked it. I would do things differently if
Yeah,
I
and
was
I'm not
going
surprised.
back. Yeah.
Oh, now that's an
So
interesting statement. Tell me more about that, Jenny. What would you do differently?
I think I would just probably set, even for myself, like sometimes you say, oh, my work-life balance, but yeah, I was the worst person for like starting to do something at 10 to 5 and then sitting there thinking, oh, I haven't got home on time. But it would be entirely, sometimes entirely my own choice. So I think setting some intention yourself, and I think, if you're in, people know you're in at 6 o'clock, they come and see you at 6 o'clock because people get used to it. So I think you can set yourself up a little bit as well. So I think I would set those intentions more clearly, be a bit stricter with myself, and be clearer with other people about what I was happy with and what I wasn't. I never asked what was expected. You just kind of get the gist based on what everybody else does. So again, I think probably put expectations that aren't there on yourself and allow that bit of I don't know, that sort of thing about being, if you're busy and you're the one that's taken all the phone calls, there was always a bit of a badge of honour. And I think I
Yes.
probably unintentionally tried to keep up with that when I didn't probably need to.
And with the work that you're doing today, what's your hope for HR leaders and leadership over the next 2 to 3 years? How would you like to see this change?
I'd love to see it change in a way that our people can trust their own judgment, that they have got someone to go and check with, they've got someone to think things through with, so that when they go, they're clear rather than reacting. And I was listening to this session that you did previously, in his session, I thought there's some really interesting stuff in there around how can each employee experience, so we actually think about our workers as if we were treating a customer rather than churning out the stuff that we've always churned out. And I think that's a really nice perspective. So I'd like HR people to feel confident enough to go and influence, because I think there's still a very a little disrespect for HR and a lack of clarity between HR and the business about what the role is. And so I think I'd like the HR people to feel more confident in themselves, more confident in what the role is, and take ideas to the table rather than just sort of being reactive to whatever's thrown up. And it's really hard, particularly I think in that food environment where stuff's happening 24 hours a day. It's really hard not to be reactive, but I'd love to see that move on, because I think kind of pay people to come in to do a more strategic role and then end up giving them loads of sort of admin tasks and then wonder why they don't deliver the more strategic stuff. So I'd love for people to have the confidence to do more of what they're there to do and to have the courage to do it.
If you were to rewrite a job description, what would you take out for an HR leader?
For HR?
Yeah.
Payroll, always. Get rid of payroll as soon as possible. I think, I don't know if it's the stuff that's in the job description. I think it's the stuff that isn't, around that expectation of kind of managing everybody else and being responsible for everybody else. I think I would take that away. Like, if a manager's done a bad job, well, you should have known they were going to do it and stopped them. You should have made sure they were performance managing their people. You should have. I think it's that. I'd like to see some of that come out and be replaced with a more equal partnership.
Yeah.
And if I could have my time again, I think sometimes it's set up a little adversarially, like you've got to stand your ground, you've got to push back as HR. And I think that can cause friction. If I was going back again, I would go back much more curious than, somebody said the other day, curious, not furious. And I thought,
I like that.
That's lovely. Actually, to go back and really try and understand where people are coming from and advise from that point of view, rather than jumping straight in with, that's your job, that's my job. Some of the stuff that I think makes the whole system not work so well.
Yeah. I like that. Curious, not furious. Very well said. Very well said. So when you look at all the great work you've done so far, your hopes and dreams for what you'd like the leadership, an HR leadership role to be like, how do you see your role and your business evolving to support these HR leaders?
Yeah, so I think a couple of ways. One, like the mentoring side, so that HR leaders can grow and be more confident and more able to sort of move that people agenda on right from the start, rather than sort of learning the hard way and getting battered and getting sort of run down with it. And see a lot of people sort of leaving HR. I'd like to see that change and people get the support right at the beginning. And one of the businesses I work with did just that. So they had somebody new to role that they promoted internally and got me in as a mentor, so she got that support from the start. So I feel if people had that when they move up into the more strategic role, it would be a very different experience, certainly than it was for me. I remember getting sort of told, go and influence, go and build partnerships, go and be strategic. And I was like, I don't know what they were talking about, if I'm honest. I was just like, yeah, I'll go do that. I don't know what that means. So it didn't really help me because I didn't know what it meant. I needed someone to show me what that looked like and to find my way, because not everybody's way is the same. And when I was job sharing, my job share partner was more extrovert, and she would say, oh, if it needs a subtle approach, you go. And if it's more direct, I'll go. So we kind of found who was good at what, and we'd sort of pick what needed doing and kind of try and play to our strengths. And I think that's when I first started to realise, oh, there are some benefits to doing it the way I do it, whereas I thought the way she did it was the gold standard. So I'd love to see people find their own earlier and not be thrown in and then be told they're not doing enough, or you're not the HR business partner you should be. I'd like to see that not happen to many people.
And I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing, I know that's where your support and coaching comes in. To anyone who's watching this today, or again watching the recording, and they're looking at a coach, tell them the kind of things that you are doing and have put in your programs for this year to be able to support HR leaders with that gap that you were just talking about.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So the coaching and the mentoring is around finding your own style, sort of dealing with some of that imposter, the sort of feelings that come up, finding ways to influence that work for you, growing confidence, and looking at sort of career change, what's the right career. Sometimes people want to make a shift, whether it's different organisation. So I do a lot of work around sort of people wanting to make a bit of a shift, or maybe going for a new job. So that sort of support, I think, massively helps. The other thing I'm doing is running an HR business partner program with a friend and colleague, Sarah. She's got a lot of experience in HR as well. So the two of us are going to do a group program which will help people go from sort of HR advisory type role into HR business partner, or if people are standalone, give them some support. Because I think that's the other thing. If you haven't got a good HR person, where are you going to learn? Because the CIPD stuff, I remember doing some of that and thinking, that's brilliant. Then I go back to my organisation all keen and excited, and then it would just fall flat and I wouldn't be able to land it. And then I'd be like, I don't know what to do now. So I think it's some of that. So we're going to do a programme, so that will be sort of peer support, group coaching, some content, how to be more strategic, how to influence, how to use data, how to get the function seen, how to be curious, not furious, all of that stuff. So that's starting in February. And I've been doing some training as well. This morning I've been doing some training with organisations. So I do coaching skills for line managers as well, and HR teams. So just the basics, just enough to get you off the starting block, because actually coaching skills can be used really effectively in all sort of people interactions, as you know, because you do it very beautifully for me. So it's that, giving some of that, asking the right questions, helping people to come up with things for themselves is a massive bonus to HR teams and to managers. So I run that sort of training as well.
That's really exciting. And when are you looking to start that? Have you got dates?
So the HR business partner program starts on the 12th of Feb, and it runs fortnightly from there for 6 sessions.
And out of those, how many spots have you got left, please, Jenny?
So we've got 6 spots left.
Perfect. Okay. So towards the end, I'll ask you to share your contact details so everyone can get that from you. But Jenny, this is the part of the show where I have some very serious questions that I feel I need to ask you. And the first one is, what is your favourite cheese?
Now I've got a head start here because I've listened to Toby's today. So brie for me.
Brie gal. I think we've had a couple of bries. Now 2025, it would be too easy. So if you look back at the last 12 months, back through 2024, which was the worst film you've watched that you feel that you're not going to get those hours and minutes of your life back again?
Yeah. So not because it was a bad film, just because it was a long film. So I didn't know Wicked was 2 hours 40 when I agreed to take my daughter. That's a long time for me to sit for a film. Ooh. So yeah, I thought it was a very long film, and probably would not have signed up if I'd realised.
I don't mind if it's an epic film and I really want to watch it, but yeah, give me fair warning with something like that it's going to be that long.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I could get on a flight somewhere for that time. Speaking of flights, imagine, Jenny, you're going on holiday and obviously you are going somewhere where there's a swimming pool. I mean, who wouldn't? Or a lovely ocean, and you needed to take a flotation device with you. What flotation device would you take with you and why, please?
So I always get a lilo as soon as I get there. That's my first job. I might beat the kids to it, but we did have a killer whale last year in the pool, and it's not so easy to get onto. So I'm going to stick with the lilo.
Love it. We haven't had a killer whale. I did not have you down as a killer whale girl. See, that's why we ask these questions, to get to know people.
No, it was borrowed.
Hidden depths. Those hidden depths. And Jenny, you and I have obviously worked together for a while. You've been through our mastermind. And I'm very grateful you've stayed with our programs, and you're a massive part of the business club. For anyone who is looking to join the business club, over the next month or so, what would you say to them? How have you found it, and what has it given you?
So I would say do it, and I do say that to people that ask me. It was given me is like strategies to try, but also the freedom to do it in my own way. There's no pressure. It's not like you have to do this, you have to follow this. I always feel like I can. And there's been things that you've helped me get over the line that I wouldn't have done as well on my own. I also feel like there's other people there, like when we did the Picture Club in London, it was just so lovely. Everybody was so nice, and we all helped each other, and that really helped me confidence-wise. So I've been able to do it at my own pace, and I've learned stuff that I can implement, but I've been able to come back and say, okay, I'm not really doing this very well. What else do I need to do? And there's always somebody there to give you a little thing to just take you then that next step further. So I've made more progress in the last year than I did before I was with you.
Jenny, thank you. And it's, I love your curiosity. You're always so curious. I've tried this. How about that? Not sure about that. What about that? And like I've always said to everyone, I'm 5 businesses in. I built 7-figure businesses, and 25 years down the line, I'm still a student. So I get it.
Yeah. You're always learning something, aren't you?
Yeah.
People come up with something. Oh, I haven't thought of that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I was always the kid of, you would ask that question, wouldn't you? It's like, well, sorry. Jenny, if anyone's looking, is listening to this and thinking, yep, I really want to get involved in Jenny's program in February, or get in touch with you in general because of your experience or what you're saying resonates with them, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Probably LinkedIn. DM on LinkedIn would be the best place to start.
Okay. Is there any other way? Just find your LinkedIn URL.
Yeah.
It's under your name, Jennie Beasley.
Yeah, Jennie Beasley Coaching.
Perfect. Jenny, I suspect you're going to get a lot of business, even more this year than last. Just keep shining bright, keep doing what you're doing. There's lots of HRs right now that really need your help. So for anyone who's listening, I hope you have found Jenny's experience and expertise helpful. She's got a lot to give. She shares a lot of wisdom. She's very good at hiding her light under a bushel. So if she's piqued her interest, reach out to her. Yeah, and she's just a gorgeous human being. She's someone I'm very fond of. So she can and will help you.
Thanks.
And it's because she wants to. So, you're very welcome. So reach out to Jenny. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for watching today. Lovely to see you, Jenny. And I'm now going to cue the music out. Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye. Thank you.